It be Christmas Eve, and I want to quickly do something for my main desktop here. For the longest time, I've been using an air cooler, but apparently this air cooler is a little bit too weak for my CPU. It's an i7 12700K, and for the most part, it seems to have been doing the job just fine. I mean, it's idling at the desktop at a fantastic temp, but when I play Cyberpunk 2077 on this thing, it goes to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Here is my secondary computer. This one has an i5-12600KF, and I'm using a 240 AIO. With that also said, I'm using it also is paired with a 3090, so the 3090 is probably being bottlenecked in some form or another. But as you see, the temps here are relatively in check. It's been running now for about maybe 5-10 minutes, so I'm going to let it run for a little bit while longer, and then I will do the cooler swap out because, well, I'm not going to play Cyberpunk that often, but if I ever get the VR mod for this game to function properly, I'll definitely be playing this game. And, well, I really don't want my processor being pegged at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Alright, a little bit more time has passed, and the temps are relatively under check. Now, yes, this is an i5, but it has more or less the same TDP of my i7. With that said, it is an i5. So with that said, now I need to show you what it's like to run Cyberpunk on my main computer, so give me a second to get that set up. Alright, and as you can see, I'm now in the 180s. Initially, I thought I had it set up in MSI to be reversed when it comes to monitoring, but nope, everything's properly set up. And of course, even core temps also telling me that the temps are also rising. Now, granted, I think when it comes to this, it's doing like the overall temp. Even still, that is significantly higher than I would like. Luckily, the 4080 is still well within check, but the CPU temps, I don't like the CPU temps. So I'm going to let this run for a little while longer and come back. Alright, a little bit more time has passed. I briefly saw it go to 199. So yeah, the cooler I'm using, which for the longest time it's actually been a really good cooler, seems to be just not adequate enough for the i7. So as much as I don't want to, I will be swapping over to that AIO, which is a little annoying because I actually like how much space the CPU cooler I'm using, which is a deep cool cooler before they got yeeted by the US government. This is not exactly a crappy little cooler, but again, for some reason or other, playing Cyberpunk is enough to overwhelm that cooler, and, well, I really don't like my processor running at 200 something degrees Fahrenheit. I don't even like it when it's at 150, but when it's at 200, no, that needs to be resolved. With that also said, I do have one of those brackets on the board to make sure the processor is even more flat, so more than likely that's what's really occurring or causing the cooler to be overwhelmed, because it's making proper contact with the cooler and is able to properly dissipate all the heat into the actual fins and whatnot. But like I said, I'm going to pull the AIO out of this computer and swap it into there, and then pull the air cooler out of this computer and swap it into here, because, well, this one has an i5, and in all honesty, an i5 really doesn't need an AIO when something like an i7, like I got in my main, actually needs it. And you may be wondering, why am I doing this video, or why am I even doing this now? Well, I'm a part of the PC Master Race, as we all know, and I like to make fun of idiot ponies on Twitter. A few of them were saying that my computer isn't capable of running Cyberpunk in the settings that it's running at, and of course the frame rate they didn't believe in and whatnot. So I was making photos, a few little videos and whatnot, clapping back, and I noticed that the temperature was a little hotter than I would like. So I do have to thank the ponies for one thing. It made me realize that the cooler I'm using in my computer, unfortunately, is not adequate enough. I mean, it is keeping it cool, and the game is running relatively fine, but again, I don't like the processor running this hot. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to swap the coolers around and hopefully have a more cooled system. So with that said, I will come back a little later on when necessary. One more thing you may be asking, why don't I just run both this computer and this computer at the exact same time running Cyberpunk? Well, this one has a 3090, this one has a 4080. It will completely overload my UPS and probably even overload my actual circuit for my room and whatnot. So I'm not gonna do that. This little UPS is already struggling half the time when I'm running the 3090. If I run both systems at the exact same time, this thing will completely overload and shut down. Well, it definitely wasn't the thermal paste application. I know that for a fact. So with that said, now I'm gonna go through the process of getting the other AIO out of the other computer and getting everything situated in a way to where I could actually set everything up. So I'm gonna get all this done off camera and I will come back when the time comes. All right, took a lot longer to get fully set up than I was initially hoping for, but I got everything set up to where I can test it, and let's see what happens. Well, seems like all the lights are lighting up. Card has not caught on fire yet. This is a 4080, so the fire risk isn't as there, but this fucking power plug, I fucking hate it. I absolutely despise this power plug. So with that said, it booted up completely fine. So the next step for me to do is to see what happens. I've yet to do any fan tuning or anything, so I'm just going to see what happens. Well, we're definitely idling a bit lower than initially, so we got that for me at the very least. Alright, but the game loaded up. Currently right now, temps are relatively fine, but then again, I just literally loaded in. With that said, the only noise I'm hearing from the computer is the coil whine from the 4080. Good grief, I keep forgetting what type of GPU I have. So, it seems like everything seems to be relatively under check for the time being, so I'll just let the thing sit for a while. And of course, the reason why I haven't closed it up yet is because, well, I need to make sure this thing's nice and stable first. Temps are well within check and that everything's more or less working. And also, I need to make sure that when I do close this thing up, that I make enough room in this little rat's nest right here for the hard drive bracket that goes right here. I'm planning on putting two 2.5 inch 2 terabyte hard drives in here for hard storage, because I currently have I have 4 terabytes worth of flash, which is nice, but I also want to have at least 4 terabytes worth of actual hard drive space because, well, flash drives they do eventually fail and they don't last as long as hard drives. And I've always wanted to have some form of mechanical backup just in case. So with that said, I'm just gonna let this run, and I'm going to try and find another one of my tubes of thermal paste because I spent like 30 minutes running through all my crap just to find one tube of thermal paste, and that tube was practically out. So when it comes to putting my secondary together, currently right now, I'm not going to be able to do that because I somehow ran out of thermal paste, even though I know I bought a big tube. At least I bought 2 tubes worth, and I know I have one that's still good, just somewhere in my room. I just don't know where. Alright, it's been sitting here for a little while longer. I moved to what I think is a more demanding section of the game. I don't know. With that said, temps are definitely within check. I want to see if I can probably fan tune this thing a little bit better, but before I do that, I'm going to let this fully run and sit for a while. So it's what, 9 p.m. or 9:30 p.m.? I'm going to come back when it's 10. And for reference, this thing's been sitting now for about maybe 10 minutes. So I'm going to give myself a short little break, laugh at ponies on Twitter, mainly that blue Urkel retard. And then I'm going to try and find my our tube of thermal paste so I can get my secondary computer put back up because, again, I don't know where my thermal paste tubes are. I normally keep them in a specific spot, but they're not there. So, I also need to back up all the Christmas music that my father has collected over the years and actually make sure that next year around, I don't have to ask my father to dig these out again for me. That way, so I can just, when I want to listen to this stuff around Christmas next year, I can just pull up the files and listen to them. Alright, it's a little bit past 10. With that said, computer's still working and temps are relatively in check. So next step for me to do is to fully close up the computer and do some more tuning because I'm going to be able to properly tune this thing to what I can handle, i.e. noise wise. So I'll get all that situated off camera and come back. Alright, the computer is back together. I've fanned everything down. It's very quiet. With that said, it is still just idling. So the next step for me to do is to make sure that the fan tune I did is actually going to function right. So I'm going to load up old Cyberpunk again and we're going to see what happens. Alright, some time has passed and the temps are definitely a little hotter than I would like, but that is to be expected. But with that said, that is why I'm running Cyberpunk. I want to make sure I have everything properly tuned, and well, I need to go back in there and tune it a little bit more, so I'm going to go and do that. Alright, she'd be a little bit more noisier, but that is to be expected. I want to make sure everything's within check. And I dropped it down significantly. It's now in the 160s. Now the real question, I can't get it to dump down into the 50s. So I'll let it idle again for a little while. And hopefully I'll get the secondary computer set up again. I'll probably just reuse the thermal paste that's already on the CPU and the CPU cooler, because if Linus is to be believed, you can reuse it. And since it is just an i5, it should be just fine until I can get some new thermal paste. With that said, when it comes to the thermal paste I'm using for this one, I am using some good Corsair stuff. So at the very least, we have that. And I know it's doing I know the actual spread is good because it is able to maintain its temps even prior to closing it all up and whatnot. Alright, it is now nearly 11:15 p.m., almost Christmas itself. With that said, computer is still running. Temps are very much under check. The fan tuning has done the job. Again, it's a noisy computer, but I'd want a cool computer when I'm gaming compared to a quiet computer when I'm gaming. If I'm gaming, the thing's going to get loud no matter what. So I want to maintain its temperatures, and I don't really care about noise as long as it's not too crazy loud. It is noisy, but not too crazy. Again, it's about as loud as my Sea of Thieves computer when I'm playing Sea of Thieves on this thing. So with that said, I'm going to now finish up my secondary and come back. A little bit more time has passed and the temps have gone down a little bit more to an extent. So everything seems to be working here. So with that said, I did an initial power on of my secondary to make sure it works. All the fans lit up, all they spin and whatnot. It even got to the desktop. So well, I know it got to the desktop, but I had no screen because I was in the kitchen. But with that said, it should just boot up completely fine. I will need to fan curve this one also, but it should just boot completely fine. Alright, and it looks like we are good to go. So next thing for me to do is to fan curve the same for idle, and then fan curve it for when I'm gaming. So I will come back my fan curve it for idle and whatnot. I forgot, it's an MSI board. Fan tuning these MSI boards is pulling teeth compared to Gigabyte's solution. So whenever I do downgrade my secondary, and I'm planning on doing that, I'm actually planning on getting myself another one of these little John's Bow cases, but it's going to be the black and orange variant. I'll be getting myself a Gigabyte board because, well, these MSI boards, they're nice, but fan tuning these things is pulling teeth, and XMP is iffy at best. I have 6,000 mega transfer RAM in this thing, DDR5, and it's running at base clock because if I enable XMP, it becomes very unstable and it just loves the blue screen. When compared to my main computer with a Gigabyte board, the XMP is enabled and they're running at full fat 6,000, and it's been stable ever since I put this computer together. So with that said, pain and misery. I'll come back in a while. Alright, everything's been fan tuned, but like I said, this is an MSI board, so it doesn't have that finite fan tuning ability like my Gigabyte board, so it's not going to be that precise as I would like, but I've quieted it down significantly, and the idle temps are well within check. So the next thing to do is to see how well this thing handles Cyberpunk temperature-wise. Alright, so it's been a little while, and the temps are completely fine. With that said, I don't know why the things are reversed, but whatever. Temps are fine. The CPU is keeping itself under check. I don't know why it wasn't working on my main computer. Maybe that fan I was using was the bottleneck. I don't know. Either way, it's working completely fine now. So my secondary computer has a good CPU cooler, And of course, now my main has been fully revamped and is going to be even quieter now than it used to be. So with that said, I think that's pretty much it for this video because, well, I just want to upload something and I just want to document the process, I guess. I don't know.